right, moving on to geomorphological indicators. We have bankful channel width. This is used in both regions. This was the same measure that was used to determine the length of the assessment reach, where you measured 3 locations and you take an average. The locations should be representative of the assessment reach, avoiding pools or bends or areas of constriction. Multi-thread channels or systems, you would include the entire active channel and not just the primary channel in the width. So bankful channel width is associated with longer duration flows. Larger channels tend to have longer duration flows. There's a perennial here, while smaller channels tend to have shorter duration flows. It's a lot narrower here. This indicator does not respond to stream flow duration like the biological indicators do, and it does not strongly control it like climate. So as you can guess, and Ken sort of alluded to this, the bankful identification is pretty important to be able to get this right. The bankful channel width is the portion of the channel that contains the bankful discharge or stage. This is usually a flow event that occurs frequently, like every 1 to 2 years, but it does not include larger floods. And finding where the bankful is, that bankful elevation, where the bankful width is measured from, is critical for accurate results. In some cases, if you can only find that indicator, bankful indicators on one side of the channel, that's usually enough. You would just draw it straight across. So some of those field indicators, Ken kind of talked about this too, the change in bank slope, a transition from exposed stream sediments and scour tolerant vegetation to more terrestrial sediments or vegetation that's less tolerant of scour. You can have moss or scour lines on rocks along the bank. And this illustration here just sort of shows you that, here is a pretty drastic slope break. Could be your bankful indicator here. It might be harder to find on this side, but if it's pretty, easy on this side, you can just kind of draw it straight across, and that would be your elevation over here. You're not just measuring the active channel width. It's not the same thing as the bankful width. So bankful channel width, you would basically just be copying from what you would put on the first page of the field form. And you just copy over that same value. This is also used in the beta SDAMs for the Western Mountains and the Great Plains. All right, the next one is Natural Valley. This is the Northeast only. This is a visual assessment of the degree of valley development along the assessment reach. This measure treats confined and unconfined valleys the same. That is, you might have your V-shaped valley. It's pretty obvious, but a wide alluvial valley looks different, but it can still be strong evidence of perennial flows. Like bankful channel width, this indicator is more associated with stream flow duration. It is neither a response to or a control of stream flow duration. And then again, we're going to have some photos from our collection or field sampling efforts. This indicator is based on that visual assessment of valley development and degree to which the surrounding land slopes to the stream. This is scored on an ordinal scale of ranging between 0 and 1.5. And half scores are also allowed here. The scoring guidance is derived from the existing North Carolina SDAM. So your poor here are 0, absent. No indication of surrounding land sloping to the valley bottom or stream. Channel located on a side slope indicative of an artificial channel or stream location or manipulation. In this example, while the channel banks look like they're pretty well defined, the land on either side of the stream does not naturally slope toward the channel, indicating that it may have been created and or artificially deepened. This would still score a 0. For a weak score of 0.5, subtle valley indicated by some of the surrounding land sloping downward to the valley bottom or stream. It's kind of hard to see this, but very slight. Some of the land, the slope is slight. It's kind of a subtle valley here. This is that dry channel. A moderate score of 1, a defined valley indicated by most of the surrounding land sloping downward to the valley bottom or stream. Here you can see it's a lot. It's pretty good defined valley. It's not well defined. It's kind of one of those ones that's in between. But this was given a 1. And then here you have your strong, it's a 1.5 score, is a well-defined valley indicated by all the surrounding land sloping downward to the valley bottom or stream. And this is more of a V-shaped example. And then here is more of a unconfined valley example. These scored the same, but this is much wider alluvial valley than the previous one, but they scored the same thing. So here, again, that guidance that we just went over is shown here between 0 and 1.5. Half scores are allowed. It is not used in other beta SDAMs. As I said before, it was derived from the existing North Carolina method. All right, channel slope. This is also northeast only. You would determine the slope using a clinometer. You would stand along the bankful height. So there's bankful again. So it's good to know where that is. Not the water surface. And some other applications, I know that a lot of times slope is done from the water surface, but not for this application. It requires direct line of sight. Use the longest visible representative portion of reach if using the entire length is not possible and slope is consistent throughout, or you would average multiple measurements, and when doing an average it would be weighted. So you would figure out, if you measure something that's a 1% slope for 60% of the reach, and then 3% slope for 20% of the reach, or 20% of the reach, and then 5% slope for the other 20% of the reach, you would get a weighted average of 2.2%. Is shown there. And here you see on the field form, it kind of gives you, if you need multiple sites, you have spaces for it, and you would record it to the nearest 0.5%. This indicator is used in the SDAM for the Pacific Northwest as well. All right, so our last field indicator is the particle size of stream substrate. This would be southeast only. So this metric is the particle size found in a stream is often a response to erosional and sediment transport forces that are the result of stream flow. And so stronger particle size differentiation is associated with longer stream flow duration. So for this metric, you'd be comparing the particle size or the sediment texture, kind of both, between the bottom of the channel and areas outside the channel. And bedrock does count. So if you have bedrock, it's not something you can just kind of pick up, but you can notice if bedrock's all in the stream and then, above you is just loam in the upland, the floodplain, that would be very strong differentiation. You may be able to visually assess in that bedrock example for sure, though some features with finer sediments may require other methods like pebble counts or that sand gauge reference card. This may be difficult to assess when channel ice is present. Again, this is evaluated throughout the assessment reach, and this is also derived from the North Carolina SDAM. So more photos from our sampling effort. So this is, again, based on a comparison of in-channel to out-of-channel sediments. I think we said earlier something about substrate sorting, but that's actually left over from the Great Plains. We're not really talking about sorting here. This is more just a straight size comparison. This indicator is scored on an ordinal scale between 0 and 3, where half scores are allowed, again. So for an absent or poor score, the channel is poorly developed. Very little to no coarse sediment is present. There's no difference between particle size in the stream substrate versus the adjacent land. And so here you kind of have this sort of channel. This is one of our channels here. It's hard to see with all the leaf litter, but you know, everything looks the same. And I know it's hard to see under the leaves, but this was given a 0, so trusting that it all looks about the same. For a weak score of 1, channel is poorly developed through the soil profile. Some coarse sediment is present in the stream bed, but is discontinuous. Particle size differs little between the stream substrate and adjacent land. Again, it's hard to see on some of these photos, but kind of here you can sort of see there might be a little more differentiation going on. There's sort of a channel, but it's not super well developed through the stream, through the soil profile. This was given a score of 1. So a moderate score of 2, there is a well-developed channel, but it is not deeply incised through the soil profile. Some coarse sediment is present in the stream bed in a continuous layer. The particle size differs somewhat between the stream substrate and adjacent land. And you can kind of see in this photo, there's some gravel and then cobble almost present in the stream. It's not deeply incised through the soil profile, but there is some difference between the size of the in-stream sediments versus out. And then the last here, we have strong score of 3. The channel is well developed through the soil profile with relatively coarse streambed sediments compared to the riparian zone soils. Coarse sand, gravel, or cobbles in the Piedmont, cobbles or boulders in the mountains, and medium or coarse sand in the coastal plain. Particle size differs greatly between the stream substrate and adjacent land. This example, it was heavily influenced by shale. It's a little hard to tell. It might look like mud, but a lot of this is shale. This was in Texas. That received score 3. So again, that same stream guidance is here. You record this here. Half scores are okay. This indicator is also used in the beta stand for the Great Plains, but it is based on the New Mexico method guidance instead of the North Carolina method guidance, which is used here, and they are a little different. And the New Mexico guidance does use the sorting aspect, which this does not. So, okay, so I am gonna stop controlling, and I'm gonna give this over to Christina unless there's any other questions. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. How do I do that? Do you just take it from me, Christina?
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, so for drainage area, this is measured at the downstream end of the assessment reach, and is calculated in square miles using one of the web tools, StreamStats, or the National Map Viewer. Now, an ideal approach is to look at one of the web tools before field work so that you get a sense of the surrounding physical features, direction that the stream is flowing in. This can help inform where you select your coordinates once you're in the field. But it's important to do this after field work to help ensure the accuracy of your points. Because, for example, if your points are very off, StreamStats or the National Map Viewer might just calculate a totally different drainage area. And this would be very hard to correct after field work has already been completed. So definitely a good supplement to use the web tool along with the field work. Excuse me. So StreamStats is the preferred and the simpler web tool to use. As you see here, there's certain states in which StreamStats is currently not available, or functionality of the drainage area tool is limited in certain areas. In those cases, you would need to use the National Map Viewer. And you'll want to collect the coordinates with sub-meter accuracy or to the nearest tenth of a meter. And again, while you're in the field, make sure to look at surrounding features such as nearby tributaries, man-made features such as roads, buildings, surrounding topography. Okay, so on the left is USGS StreamStats. So again, this is the preferred, simpler tool to use in that you just need to enter the coordinates of the location, and it'll automatically generate the drainage area based on the location. Again, the point located at the downstream end of the reach. Whereas with the National Map Viewer, and you see that there's these purple lines indicated to help guide drainage area boundaries, as well as NHD plus or National Hydrography data set, and then as well as map contour lines. So essentially for the National Map Viewer, you need to draw the drainage area yourself, which is why, in most cases, StreamStats is the preferred method. But using the National Map Viewer, using these contours and these purple and blue lines can help guide your interpretation. So we see here, this point here is the point, the downstream end of the reach for the site. And then if you kind of small to see, but if you see this valley or these contour lines like concave, this represents the area in which the stream is contained within the valley here. And again, so StreamStats and the National Map Viewer, they will compute the drainage area to the nearest. So the tools will compute the drainage area to the nearest hundredth, but in the field app, you'll want to input to the nearest tenth of a meter. So for example, 0.06 round to 0.1. So again, want to input to the nearest tenth of a meter once you're using the web application, and the web app will automatically assign based on your coordinates to the northeast or southeast. And the bin for northeast is less than 0.5 or greater than equal to 0.5 square miles. Southeast, less than 0.1 or greater than or equal to 0.1. Okay, so the last indicator I'll be discussing is average precipitation. So average precipitation is calculated using the 30-year average precip value from the PRISM data, parameter elevation regression on independent slopes model. And they use 800-meter grid cells essentially, and there's more information here. So there's the 30-year average for each month is averaged over a 3-month period. So for Northeast, it uses August, September, and October. Southeast uses May, June, and July. And similarly, the web app will automatically calculate the precip value based on the coordinates entered, which, again, the location where whatever grid cell the location of the coordinates falls in.